What's going on, guys? It's what is it? It's Tuesday. Here I am. It's another one of these videos that we're doing. If you have gone through the Cornerstones book with us, if you're at our church, Royal Palms, I hope you do. If you've got a family that you're using the Cornerstones book, because it's a great resource for just going deeper into theology with your own family. So today's question is going to come from the Jesus section of the book. It is, what three offices does Jesus fulfill? So what three offices does Jesus fulfill? Now, okay, this is a weird question for some if you've not grown up thinking about this, about the idea that Jesus fulfills an office. But what we mean are, what are the roles, right? What are the roles that Jesus fulfills? So think about that for just a second. What roles does Jesus fulfill? Okay, so some of you would say, well, we know king, right? Because he is our king that was even put up on the cross, and we know that we call him King of Kings, Lord of Lords. But are there other capacities to which we find Jesus fulfilling in the Bible? So this is a great thing to think about, and I love it. I love this discussion because you might have heard this in church, you might have heard this answer, but let's talk about what that really means, okay? And I'll show you some Old Testament connections too. So here is the answer that we give, and it says this. It says Jesus is the perfect fulfillment of the offices of prophet, priest, and king. Okay? Perfect fulfillment of the offices of prophet, priest, and king. So here we go. Let's talk about what that looks like and what that means. So as we talk about prophet, there's a really important passage that comes from the book of Deuteronomy. And so in Deuteronomy 18, the context is about how people would seek out other gods and other shamans and things like that. I'm paraphrasing here. And then you get to 18. This passage is fascinating. So look at what it says. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own brothers. You must listen to him. This is what you requested from the Lord your God at Horeb, that's Sinai, on the day of the assembly, when you said, let us not continue to hear the voice of the Lord our God or see his great fire any longer, so we will not die. Now that's Exodus 19 is what he's talking about. If you have spent a little time with me, you know that I believe that in Exodus 19, God was about to call the people up, and the people said, no, we don't want to be with God. We need somebody to go before us. And so that relationship changes. The priesthood is established as a result. Another conversation, another time. So he's saying, remember that time, right? You wanted somebody else to go before you. Then he goes on to say this, verse 17. Then the Lord said to me, they have spoken well. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers, and I'll put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I commanded him. And I will hold accountable whoever does not listen to my words that he speaks in my name. Okay, now this is really important because I actually think the way the Cornerstones does, it's light. Obviously, it's not going to be a full discussion, a full-blown theological kind of treatise on what it means to be prophet, priest, and king. But let me give you something that's fascinating. If you look at what Moses was like, Moses in a way kind of functioned in all three of those capacities as well. Moses does so many priestly actions. Moses is obviously a prophet. And even Moses, there's a reference in the end of Deuteronomy about he was king-like, right? And so you think about that, right? Think about what else it means that Moses, to be a prophet like Moses, meaning he was going to have to do a bunch of things and show people how he was Moses-like. So if you've been following with us at Royal Palms on Sundays, we're going through the book of Matthew. And one of the things I think is important is that Matthew's use of Old Testament quotations, and the story is Matthew is highlighting the fact that Jesus is the greater Moses, right? So that's important. Now, Moses in this passage tells us that God is going to bring up a prophet one day, and everybody better listen to him. Everybody is responsible to hear from him. So what is the fulfillment of this? Well, Hebrews 1 verses 1-2 says, long ago God spoke to our ancestors by the prophets, at different times in different ways. And in these last days, he's spoken to us by his Son. God has appointed him heir of all things and made the universe through him. So Hebrews is saying, yeah, we are all responsible to deal with the words of Jesus now. We in the same way that Moses had said, God said through Moses that we were going to have to respond and listen to Jesus only, right? Now we find that in Hebrews. If you look at the book of Acts chapter 3, Peter will pretty much just come out and say that Jesus is the fulfillment of Deuteronomy 18, the prophet. Okay, so Jesus is a prophet. His words matter, what he says matters, and how we respond to them matters, right? This is why we do what we do at church, is we're here to not think about my words or your thoughts. And I'll just say this too. Let me pull my little face over for just a second, right? Come on, what on earth is this doing? It's transitioning out. I'm not even in my thing anymore. You're seeing too many things on my screen. I'm pulled over. I don't like this. There we go. There we go. Listen, okay? When we do Bible studies, when we do things like this, we need to recognize it's not about your thoughts. It's not about how you feel. It's about what does the text actually say, right? And so that's something we need to understand, is I'm accountable to the Lord from his words that he's given me through the text. And so when we study the Bible, we're studying, asking, and understanding that whatever he says, I am responsible to obey and come under the authority of that text, under those words, right? And that's important to understand, is the words of Christ, ultimately the words of the prophets that we find in the scriptures. But what Jesus said is important, what Jesus did is important, what the prophets said is important, and we're held accountable to that, okay? Now, if my screen's not going to be all weird, I'm going to go back and show you the next one. So we said he fulfills the office of prophet. How about priest now? So let's look at priest here. You'll see in the Old Testament, Aaron was to present a bull, right? And so here's the text, Leviticus 16. Aaron will present a bull for his sin offering, make atonement for himself and his household. So prior to him even being allowed to go in and start doing to make atonement for the people on the Day of Atonement, in Leviticus 16, Aaron had to make an atonement for himself first to cleanse himself, and then he would be acceptable to go in. Notice what Hebrews says. But Christ has appeared as the high priest of the good things that have come in the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation. He entered the most holy place once and for all, not by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, having obtained eternal redemption. So it's interesting. In the Old Testament, the priest was to go and he was going to make atonement for people. He was going to place blood on the ark and on the items in the temple to show that God had covered over. Symbolically, their sins had been dealt with. And now Jesus is the one who goes in. He doesn't need to bring a bull for himself because he's sinless, and brings his own blood. And once and for all, it's done, finished, once for all time. Look at that text. He's dealt with it. You're not having to go back, and you don't have to wait another year to hope that God might deal with your sin. It's over. It's finished. He's done it all when you place your faith in him. He is the ultimate high priest. And you'll see, even in Hebrews, talked about he's a high priest from the order of Melchizedek. And Melchizedek's an interesting figure. He was the priest king of Salem, formerly. That was what it was called before, Jerusalem. There's a lot of little things that come with that. That's a fun topic to look at, but for another time. Let's look at one more. What about king, right? Was he a king? Well, here's an interesting thing. God told King David in 2 Samuel 7, when your time comes and you rest with your ancestors, I'll raise up after you a descendant who will come from your body, and I'll establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Now, this is fascinating, right? Because as David is wanting to build a temple for God, God says, I'm not going to have you build a temple. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a house for you. And what he means is a dynasty, And he drops this on him, saying that, look, I'm going to come after you. I'm going to raise up a descendant after you. He will rule forever. Now, when you read the 2 Samuel passage, it talks about descendants that will come afterwards in this, and that there will be ones that will be punished. And in a way, Jesus is punished for the sins of all of those guys in the entire world. But the Chronicles version of this highlights the fact that this passage is also highlighting one single individual who would come from the line of David and rule on behalf of the entire world, on behalf of God. And it's also interesting that the prophets will pick up this idea of somebody who comes from the line of David. They'll say the root of Jesse, that David, the house of David, all of that. They all are looking for someone who will come and rule forever. Look at how Revelation 19:16 says, he has a name written on his robe and on his thigh, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so when we think about Jesus, we need to recognize there are three main offices that he fulfills, right? He prophet, priest, and king. Prophet, priest, and king. And he is all of those. We depend on what he says. We must do what he has told us, and honor him. And then also recognize that he's also dealt with the fact that when we are failures, he's already dealt with that being our priest, and we can go to him. But a fascinating little look today, talking about the roles of Jesus, the offices that Jesus takes. I hope that's helpful, some discussion for you. And so we'll talk to you guys later on. Take care.